Hello, everybody. Welcome to our conversation about informative speaking. We're just going to be talking about the outline today, as well as the prompt. And then afterward, I'm going to show you, if any of you have been struggling with formatting on your computers for your outlines, we're going to go over that as well and how to kind of fix any formatting errors. So hopefully this helps you with outlining, because really I think the hardest part about outlining is getting the formatting down on your computer. All right, so let's start with your speech prompt. Now this was posted already last week, so hopefully you read it. You kind of needed this in order to do your topic approval, but let's go through it together. So your informative speech prompt. In this 3 to 5 minute speech, you will inform the class about a topic of general interest as it relates to politics or culture in today's society. This speech will help you learn how to organize and present information in a logically cohesive and coherent format. Choose a topic or subject you care about. You can teach the class about a significant cultural artifact. An artifact is just another term for something, an item from your culture, a norm, a practice that your culture has, an invention that your culture has made. There's a lot of things you could do here. Even an event is something, that can be cultural. You could talk about historical events that relate to today's world, past events or current events, technology, wars, global phenomenons, disasters, etc., political issues, policies, laws, injustices, history of a person or an item, how to make something or do something is what that's supposed to say. Do something. What do you know that we might not know? Right? But ultimately, all of these options should cover something as it relates to politics or culture in today's society. So think about a topic that affects a large group of people. Now, whatever topic you choose, make sure the speech does not enter the realm of persuasion. And this is where it gets a little confusing. So the topic can be persuasive in nature, meaning that the topic itself might be something that people argue about. The topic itself is something that maybe has two or more sides of an issue, right? Abortion is a persuasive topic because there are basically two sides to it, right? Pro-choice and pro-life. So a persuasive speech about a persuasive topic like abortion would be, I believe in a woman's right to choose. So today I'm going to try and convince you why you should be pro-choice as well. That would be persuasive and a persuasive topic. But you can do a persuasive topic like abortion, but do it in a way that's informative, meaning that there's no personal opinion, there's no bias, there's only factual information so that you're giving our audience something to think about and they can make a choice for themselves. So a persuasive topic like abortion done in an informative way would sound something like, these are the laws around abortion in the United States as compared to Korea, right? So that would just be informative. I don't have my opinion on about those things, but I can look up and do research and say, oh, well, in the United States, you can get an abortion at this week of gestational age. In Korea, it would be at this stage or never, right? So that would be informative only. So another example of this might be, because I'm going to tell you right now, most of these topic areas are probably going to be pretty persuasive, right? I mean, we could do a speech about coronavirus right now. A persuasive speech about coronavirus would be, the US government is not handling the coronavirus outbreak well, and here's why. And this is what I think we should do about it, right? So persuasion is saying, here's my opinion, I think it's a problem, and I need a solution to it. So you can help me do that. An informative speech for coronavirus would say, here are the facts about what the coronavirus is, how it affects our bodies, and what the true numbers are in terms of death globally, right? No opinion. I'm not telling you whether I think it's right or wrong. I'm just saying these are the actual facts because I did the research for it. So hopefully that makes sense. You can do a persuasive topic, but you cannot make it a persuasive speech. So that's what I mean by whatever topic you choose, make sure the speech doesn't enter the realm of persuasion. So topic can be persuasive, content needs to be facts, not personal opinion or bias. So another way to kind of tell if your speech is actually persuasive is if you are saying, seeing something as only positive or negative, or right or wrong. If your speech includes words like should, you should, or we need to, that technically is suggesting a bias, but also it kind of suggests that there's a problem that needs a solution. Anytime that you're saying this is a problem, you're saying this is bad, so we need to fix it, right? So be careful of that. You just want to present information fact, right? If we then think, oh, well, that's to me, that's really bad, then we've come to that conclusion ourselves. But that's not your job in this speech. Your job is just to give us the facts and we can make our own minds up about it. All right, so although you should include your own experience in your speech, like you did with the first one, there's less of that in this speech. This speech should be well researched from credible sources only. Now, in the next lecture, the one right after this, it's going to be one of the most important ones for you to watch because it's talking about what are credible sources? How do you find them? How do you cite them? How do you do research really is what that whole lecture is going to be about. So make sure you don't miss it. Now for this speech, 4 to 6 sources are required. That's the requirement. However, you really, anytime you make a claim, and a claim is when you state something as a fact, right? Now, there are certain claims like dogs have 4 legs that you don't need to support because we all have access to that kind of baseline information. Right now, of course, you can make an argument that no, not all dogs have 4 legs, some have 3, some have 2. Yes, but generally, biologically and evolutionarily, dogs were born with 4 legs, right? So those types of things we don't really need support for. Saying that there's gravity or evolution, although it seems like you need to kind of support that nowadays, it is still something that we all would agree upon in the medical community for generations and centuries. That is just a known fact. So claims that are not those exact ones that I just gave you, that are stating as fact, you need to support. So if you say something like, most people would agree that coronavirus is bad, do you think you need to cite that or not? That depends on what your topic is, actually, but for the most part, no. We would all agree that coronavirus has been kind of, on the whole, bad. But this is where it gets a little fuzzy. Now, if you're doing a speech about coronavirus being bad for the economy, those specific facts that you give us to provide the evidence for it is bad for the economy, those would need to be cited, right? So if you said, coronavirus has been bad for the economy in terms of people losing their jobs, and then you give us you find a statistic, all of that needs to be supported with facts. So I would want to find something that tells me how many people have lost their jobs in the United States or globally in the last 3 months because of the coronavirus, and then tell you where I got that source from. We're going to go more into depth with this, but that's just a basic overview. Anytime you're stating something as a true fact, cite it, find something to support that. So what that really means is, while I say you need 4 to 6 sources, that's the requirement for the speech to kind of fulfill, anytime you make a claim, you need to back it up with a source. And so what this means is that you need a source for each claim you make, but it can be, as long as there are at least 4 different sources, you can use one source over and over again for different points that you're making. Hopefully that makes sense. So this means, however, that if you make 7 claims, you need a source for each one. But again, you don't need 7 different sources. As long as you have at least 4 different sources, you can use one claim 3 times. One source 3 times. All in all, any claim you make needs support. It needs a source. You're also going to be graded on proper citation of sources, both in the text and the works cited page. Again, we're going to talk about that next lecture. So for help with that, watch the next lecture, and then in that next lecture, I'll also talk about how to use Purdue OWL, the website that helps you with APA or MLA citations, and it's really great. All right, so now that you know what the speech is going to be about and what are some of the requirements, here's another requirement, and that's your visual aid. So You do have to use one visual aid. It is a little more difficult now that you're having to film yourself do this speech. It means that you're going to have to think a little bit more about how do I show a visual aid through a computer so that the audience can see it. Again, we're going to talk about this in a few weeks when we get to, I'm making it confusing for you. Next week on the 16th, we're going to talk about visual aids. So you'll be able to see what that's going to look like in your next speech. So just know that that conversation will happen soon. Now, ultimately, a visual aid should help inform your speech in some way. It's not something you add just to say, oh, I need to fulfill this in the speech. Visual aids do something really, really important. They help your audience understand your speech in a way that maybe they couldn't without it. So especially if you're showing statistics about whatever it is that you're talking about, having a graph or a picture or a chart can really help with that. So we're going to talk about this more, but ultimately you can use an item, a photograph, a demonstration, a handout, and anything else that we're going to talk about that day. All right, now outline and topic approval is required. That's standard. You know what to do now with that. Topic choices are due on Canvas in the same module that you'll find this prompt. Under topic choices, discussion by midnight, Thursday the 26th. You know what, I want to make sure that those dates are right. They might not be right for you in this class. So those dates, ignore right now. This will be updated in your module. Okay. Now let's go on to how is this informative speech outline going to differ from what you did in your value speech? Now in your value speech, it was a very basic outline, just to get you used to what belongs in an intro, what belongs in a body, what belongs in a conclusion, how to do transitions, and all of that. Excuse my dog. Now, this one is already starting a little differently. In the beginning, before you ever start your speech, your outline, sorry, not your speech, but your outline, I'm gonna have you do something differently here. With your first speech, there was nothing to do here, but this one's gonna be a little different. So, in the lecture that was right before this one, you'll see that we talked about what the general purpose is, what the specific purpose is, and what a thesis is. So don't forget that you're going to be putting those at the beginning of your outline. You are not saying these in your actual speech out loud to us. These are just so I know that you know what you're here to talk about when we break it down with these three terms: general, specific, purpose, and thesis. So you're going to write those here. Then we'll get into the intro. Now the intro has something slightly different. We have the same attention getter, right? I put this a little differently just because many of you have used attention getters that you needed to kind of explain. So that's what that would look like in terms of indentation. Still introducing yourself in the topic, and you're still doing the thesis and the three main points separately, right? The added element is this credibility statement. And I explained it in the last lecture, but just as a recap, a credibility statement is anything that makes you credible or more able to talk about this topic than somebody else, right? Another example is that I am able to tell you about public speaking because I have a master's degree from Cal State Northridge in communication studies, where I have taught public speaking for over 6 years, right? So that would be my credibility, why I'm able to tell you this and not somebody else. Your credibility statement might sound different. It could just be, I've been doing research about this for the last 3 weeks, right? That gives you a leg up than somebody else who has not done the research. It could also be that you've lived through it, right? If your speech is going to be about immigration, I use this as an example already, but if you're doing a speech about immigration and you yourself are from an immigrant family, then wow, you have a great credibility statement because you've lived through it and you see through the eyes of that topic, right? So the credibility statement is key because what it does is it tells your audience right at the front, this is why you can trust me with the information I'm about to tell you. If you don't establish your credibility, we might not want to listen as much as we would if we knew that you were credible, right? So making sure that this is a really compelling and true credibility statement is really important because it sets us up for whether we want to listen to you the rest of your speech or not. Transition is the same into the body. And all these stay the same, right? Main point, you have whatever sub points and sub points, support points, anything like that. That's all going to be the same. This looks a little different. Support points just mean that maybe in your sub point, you are saying something like, according to Jones and Matthews, 1 out of 5 college students will struggle with depression. And then you give support for that, saying stuff like maybe a particular story about a student or more research that you found that would support that statement. Hopefully that makes sense to you. All right, so we're skipping down, going through all of our main points. Now we're at the conclusion. So this doesn't look very different either. The conclusion's just the same. Restate the thesis and the main points, have a drop the mic statement, thank the audience for listening. Now remember these two, the memorable statement and thanking the audience, those can be in any order. I prefer having the drop the mic statement last because it leaves us with something a little bit more memorable. But ultimately, you choose whatever makes most sense and what flows best for you. So really the only thing we're adding to this speech is research and the credibility statement, okay? The persuasive speech is gonna look similar, but it's gonna have a few more added elements. All right, now in terms of grading, I wanted to show you what I'm gonna be doing a little differently. So right here, this area, that is all what I graded you on for the value speech. Now I graded you on your attention getter, how well you gain the attention of the audience. If you clearly stated your thesis and your main points, right? The introduction in the new informative speech is just gonna have the added element of your credibility statement. So I'm still looking for the attention getter, still looking to see that you stated your thesis and main points clearly, but I'm also gonna be looking at how well you stated your credibility and if you did it at all, right? That's gonna be a big point item because it's so crucial that in a speech where you're giving us, trying to inform us on something or teach us about something, we need to know that we can trust what you've just taught us. So that's a big point item. Now, in terms of the body, I do a little extra as well. So in the body of your value speech, I looked at how clearly you organized the speech, right? Did the main points make sense in the order that you put them? The actual sentence structure, how well you wrote out the speech, did that make sense? Main points, were they clearly stated when you got to them? Did you have smooth and clear transitions so I knew where you were at all times in your speech? That is still happening over here, clear organization, main points clearly stated, and smooth, clear transitions. The only two added elements are balanced main points and supports thesis. So what I mean by these, the balanced main points are, if you have 3 points, if you have 4 points, however many points you have, you should not have more than 5. Really 3 is a good number. But with those 3 main points, balance just means, did you spend 30 seconds on main point 1, but then spent 5 minutes on main point 2? Because that says to me that maybe the whole speech should have been about the main point 2. Maybe main point 1 and 3 didn't really matter that much. And then it calls into question what was really the point of your speech. So balanced main points means that you have a speech that has 3 cohesive, coherent, and need to be said main points. Hopefully that makes sense as well. The next one is supports thesis. So sometimes you might do a speech and you think that all this information is really, really crucial, but you might get a little off topic and now there's pieces of the speech that don't really make sense and don't really support what your main goal is. So if your main goal, your thesis, is today I'm here to talk about how college students, the facts around depression in college students, and then you have a main point or any subpoints that talk about how your friend rode a Razor scooter into a store, I might be sitting here going, well, how does that relate? Does that actually support the thesis of what college students go through in terms of depression and school, right? So making sure that all the points you're making really support that main idea of why you're here. Great. Conclusion, no different. I know that these are separated out, but ultimately it's just the same there. Delivery gets a little bit more complex. So for your value speech, what we looked at was extemporaneous speaking, and that is how well you not just practice your speech, but how much did you memorize the speech versus using the note cards? We want a good balance, right? We don't want it to be completely memorized because it's, you sound like you're acting and rather than being genuine and more conversational. And we don't want it to be completely right off the cards because you kind of become a robot and totally emotionless. We want a good amount of both. And that has to do with how much you practice your speech and how you only use note cards really when you need to. So we're still looking at that. We're still looking at eye contact, right? How well you're looking at, now in this case, your video camera to look at us. Some of you, though, looked around the room pretending like people were there, and I thought that was really powerful. So eye contact, I'm looking to see that you're kind of focusing on looking at either us in the video camera or pretending people are in the room and looking around. I'm still looking at natural movement and gestures, so that's body language and hand gestures. And so that is going to be, right, your hand gestures, what you're using. It's not too wild, but not non-existent. You're standing in a way that is not distracting. You know, you're not shifting weight or playing with your hair. You're actually using your body in a way that helps your speech. Avoiding filler words, saying and, like, because, you know, those types of things. Same thing as the first one. It gets a little out of order here, but rate, still looking at rate, how fast or slow you speak and how you change those things to create emotion. Volume, how loud or quiet you speak and how you use those things to create emotion. Vocal variety, still looking at that. That's a big one, right? So that's tone, pitch, inflection. We talked about this in a previous lecture, but that's crucial to displaying emotion and getting us to feel your speech rather than just hear it. So still looking at all those things, also looking at time limits. The added elements to this informative speech are going to be facial expressions, right? So I might have mentioned something about your facial expressions in your first speech, just if it was, you know, if it spoke to me. But ultimately, facial expressions are crucial. Your facial expressions tell the audience whether I should be feeling something or not and what I should be feeling. Right? You convey what you want me to feel. And your facial expressions have to match your tone. If those don't match, it becomes really confusing for the audience to know, how am I supposed to feel about this? So we're going to be looking at facial expressions this time as well. We're also going to be looking at, and this is so important, whether or not you verbally cited your sources. That is a huge amount of points. Again, this whole speech is adding a huge element, I keep saying huge, but a huge element, which is the actual research and of the information, right? The first one, you didn't have to use any research, but this one you do. And so what that means is citing your credibility in the beginning and then citing all the sources every time you make a claim, not just in the outline written, but verbally to us. That always sounds just something like, according to blah, and then you cite your source. So making sure that you're actually saying those out loud. And then the last added element is the visual aid. How well you use the visual aid, if it was a good one, if it actually helped the speech, could we see it, could we hear it, did you explain it if it needed explaining? Again, we're gonna talk about this when we go forth. So all of that is basically what you're going to be doing for your informative speech. These will all be posted, obviously, into your module, not just in this lecture, so that you can start working on that speech. Hopefully all that makes sense. So now what I'd like to do is just do a quick walkthrough. If you already know how to format an outline on your computers, great. You don't need to be here for this. But if you are struggling and you keep trying to format and the formatting always goes off, I'm going to try and show you how to do that right now. So stick around if you want to watch this. All right, now this is what our pages should look like at the beginning of doing any sort of writing. I'm using Google Docs. I think it's a great program to use. You're able to access your document anywhere. I'm totally selling it right now. I'm not being paid by them, but ultimately you can access it anywhere you go. It automatically saves for you. So there's no excuse to say like, oh no, I left my document at home, or my computer crashed and it lost it, because this is connected to the internet. You can make it so that it's available offline, so that if you don't have internet, you can always access your document even without internet as well. But they do automatic formatting for you, and so does Microsoft Word. Do not use Pages. Pages is so much more difficult to work with, but it also, when you try and upload it to our Canvas, outline downloader, whatever it is, when you upload it to Canvas, I don't see Pages. It does not allow me to download it or see it the way that you do. So don't use Pages. Use either Microsoft Word or Google Docs, please. Thank you. All right. So we always want to start with kind of the headlines and the titles, right? Now, this one, I did not have that because I was just using it as an example, but we're going to do that here. So you want to do the date, the class, the professor, and of course, your name. Now you could also do your last name and the page number here. That's a little bit more fancy and college related, so you could do that too, and I appreciate it. You also always want a title for your speech, right? You could just name it informative speech, that's fine. You could also get more creative if you like. All right, now for this next speech, there were things that I wanted you to do, right? I want you to do these 3 things first. Now for these purposes, I'm just gonna select, press the right mouse button and click copy. Back to my document, press the right mouse button again, click paste. Okay, that's done. Now let's make this the same size and font. Now general purpose, we already did it. I'm here to inform. Specific purpose, why are you giving this talk? Let's just write, actually let's add our general purpose into it too. To inform my students about how to manage depression, ooh, hello, and anxiety. Apparently I cannot type today, y'all. Okay. Now the thesis is going to include the main points, so it'll start with this. Copy, paste. I will discuss meditation, yoga, breathing. Oops, we don't need a capital B there, y'all. Breathing techniques. Okay, great. That's my speech. To inform my students about how to manage depression and anxiety, I will discuss meditation, yoga, and breathing techniques. Great. Woohoo! Done with the thesis. Now let's start with the actual outline, and this is where it gets hairy because formatting can go a little haywire. Now in class, we talked about this briefly. Not doing transitions until you're completely done with your speech. Don't do transitions until you're completely done formatting the rest of the speech. That is how formatting gets off. But let's now start with how to start formatting so that your computer is kind of doing it for you. The very first thing, I remember our intro always is Roman numeral 1. Some teachers do this differently, but I always like to have intro, body, and conclusion be Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3. So what I did is I typed in a capital I, put a period, and I pressed the space bar. Did you see how it shifted? I'm going to show you one more time. Capital I, period, press space bar, and it shifts to the right. That means with that little shift that the computer is now formatting for me. Now, if I press enter, it'll just go away. So I need to write something in it to have it actually work. So let's do capital I, period, space. Let's label our intro. Now that's all I need on that line, right? If we're looking at this as an example, we just need introduction as a title. Now the first thing we have in our introduction is the attention getter. So anytime I need to go to the next line, I'm pressing the enter or enter bar. Now anytime that you press enter from whatever line you're in, it'll stay in that line. It'll stay in that indentation row. Now I don't want a number 2 because that's the body. I want to indent to the right to get to attention getter. So anytime that you are indenting to the right, you press tab. And the tab bar will keep going that way if you keep pressing it. Now I don't want to go that far, I want to go back. And so what I would do is press the enter button again. As long as nothing is written in there, pressing enter goes backward, pressing tab goes forward. Enter, backward, tab, forward. All right, but we want to go just one indent in, which is A. Now to keep it where it is indented, I have to write something in it. So I wrote attention getter. Now I don't want to fill out my speech yet. I'm just going to leave it here for now. Okay, and we're gonna move on to the next label. So that's something I would recommend is when you're doing this formatting, write in all the labels and then go back to them and fill them in with your full sentences. Now, what's the second thing that we need? We need to introduce self and topic. Great, we can put our sentence there later. Then we need our credibility statement. We'll fill that in later. We have our thesis. Now, we have 3 main points that we want to put indented underneath the thesis. So this just put me in the same line. I don't want that. I want to indent underneath. So what do I press? Tab. Tab goes in. So now we can write main point 1, main point 2, enter, main point 3, enter. Remember, enter keeps you on the same line until you get here, and if I don't write anything, pressing enter will take me backward. So let's do that again. I don't need a main point 4, not for this speech. But what do I have to put in next? So after our main points, we have a transition. Now I've told you don't use transitions yet, and I'll show you why. Now to get all the way back, remember if I want to go to the left, do I press enter or tab? Enter. So I press enter, it goes back. Enter, it goes back. Now if I want to add a transition, I need to go back all the way. So I press enter again. It takes off the formatting. I put in transition, but now look, when I press enter, we're off the formatting. There's nothing happening. So how do I go back to the formatting if I've already gotten off of it? I would erase all of that. I mean, you don't have to, but I want to add transitions later. Basically, you get your cursor back to the end of where something is formatted and press enter again. And I have the number back. So let's say I lose it again. Uh-oh, okay. Click here, you got it back. So let's skip the transition, we'll add them in later, and let's go to the next part of our speech, which is the body. So we're flush left, we're going to Roman numeral 2, body. Now we press enter to go to the next line, but again, I don't need a Roman numeral 3 because that's conclusion. I need to go with main point 1. So we press tab, label it, main point 1. What's our main point 1? Meditation. Not meditation, that's a different thing. Now if I want to add a subpoint, that's not where I want to be, right? I want to be indented. So press tab. Enter keeps us in the same line. Yeah, because remember, if you have a 1 subpoint, you need 2. If you have A, you need B. Now let's say that I have a subpoint here that I want to say more about. Let's say that this subpoint is talking about guided meditation. I want to say full sentences about that, right? If I go like this, that's not going to help me. That's a 3rd separate subpoint. But I want to say more about guided meditation. So I press tab again, and I'll write in whatever it is I want to say, right? Guided meditation is when someone speaks to you about a vision and you follow blah, 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 right? So whatever that is. Now again, if I have an A, I need a B, so I would want to add a second point to that point. Now, let's say you even wanted to go further. You had a lot more to say about this. Then you press enter and tab. So anytime you want to make a subpoint, you just press enter to go below and tab to go inward, right? And this can keep going for a long time. So don't worry about having too many subpoints. It's totally fine. Okay, we don't need that. Let's go back. Okay, now we have to go back the other way. I'm done with these main points. I'm going to skip the transition for now and go straight to main point 2. So what do I do? How do I go backward? So first I have to go on to the next line by pressing enter. And then remember to go left, you press enter and enter. Great, main point 2. To go forward, tab, subpoint, just forget all my misspellings. We're moving on. Let's say I have 3 subpoints for this one just to make it more realistic to what it might look like. Now I'm done with that. I want to go back to main point 3, so I go enter. Main point 3. I don't need a main point 4, so D I don't need. Now what are we on? We are on the conclusion. Okay, so again, I'm skipping the transition because I'm gonna make, oops, sorry. We're gonna make it afterward. So press enter to go backward again, conclusion. Press enter to go down to the next level, and I wanna go in, so I press tab and write in thesis, tab to go into main point 1, main point 2, main point 3. I want to go backwards, so I press enter again. Let's do the drop the mic statement first. Why not? Enter to stay in the same line for our thank audience. And then we're done, right? We've got through all the key points there. Now we can go back and add the transitions, and we can add our full sentences into the outline, right? And when you go back here, let's say that you needed to actually say a few things about the attention getter, you just do the same thing. It'll all adjust for you. That's kind of the beauty of having it do it itself. Now, if you do something like this, you undo it and you press another thing here, you're off of the formatting again. So to get back to it, always go back to the last one that was formatted and then press enter. Okay, so now let's add our transitions. So undo the formatting. Now we can write in our transitions. We need another one after main point 2, so enter, 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 enter until it goes away. Oh, hey, that's a loud transition. La, 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 la. We need one after main point 2, so go to the end. Transition, enter, 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 transition. Fill those in and then you're done. So hopefully that helps you make sense of this a little bit. It's really hard to do formatting. It gets undone so easily. The cool thing about Google Docs also is that if you put it here, it'll put the first thing that's written there, but just type in. Now, to help you even further, once you're done with your outline in Google Docs, to get it downloaded to the correct file to upload onto Canvas, you would go to File, either do Microsoft Word .docx or a PDF. I have found that sometimes either one of these can throw off your formatting for some weird reason. So if you download it, let's do it right here with the .docx and see if it saves the way that we did it. Formatting looks good. Great. So then if it looks good, you just go into the Canvas, right? If you need to see this, I can also show this to you later. But you would go into the Canvas assignment that we're looking for, right? Go to informative speech, outline and speech. And for you, you would see something different here, right? You would upload the file and there would be a button somewhere. So that's how you would do that. Now, if you, let's say, did a download and the PDF, and you did a PDF or a .docx, and for some reason the formatting was getting off, let's see if it kept. Oh, that's the wrong thing. Sorry, y'all. So you did a PDF. PDF usually locks in the formatting. Sometimes it gets a little weird. Great, formatting looks awesome. So you do the same thing. You can upload a PDF or a .doc, and those should be both fine for uploading to Canvas. But let's say that the formatting got off. What you could do is also do print, save as PDF, and it'll keep the formatting the way that it looks on your actual computer. So hopefully that helps you be able to format or fix any issues that happen if the formatting gets off. If you have any questions, of course, you can always talk to me. All right, y'all, we are done for today. Next class, we're going to be talking about research. Don't miss it. All right, thanks, everybody. Bye.